So I was inspired by both David's teaching on Adar and Bob's teaching on Purim. So I think I'm bringing new stuff, but apologies if it's repetitive. But if you didn't see David's teaching, it should be in your email. And it was beautiful. So I would recommend. And if you did, you know that we are in the month of Adar. And as we were just talking about, we just had Purim, which is an important part of Adar. And Adar is actually the end of a 12-month cycle that's spoken about in the Sefer Yetzirah. So in chapter 5, the Sefer Yetzirah goes through all of the elemental letters. There are 12 elemental letters. They're related to 12 months and also to 12 tribes, although I don't know if that's in the Sefer Yetzirah itself, but we have 12 tribes we relate them to. Um, and 12 constellations and also 12 qualities that I will talk about. So though we're not at the new year, we're at kind of a new year or like a restart to the cycle that begins again with the month of Nisan and Passover. But right now we're in Adar, which is related to the letter Kuf. It's also related to the quality of sleep. And these qualities take us through an interesting journey. So it starts with the senses. It's almost as it kind of changes over the course of the year. It also relates in a way to some other cycles. So like the cycle of a day, which starts with waking up and experiencing our senses for the first time and starting to kind of interact with others. And at the end of the day, going to sleep. Also, the cycle of a week, we end with rest on the Sabbath. So this cycle of qualities again starts with the senses, almost like we're experiencing for the first time sight and taste, and then they become more kind of interactive and relational with movement, motion, and coition, even anger. And then they're kind of grouped in threes, um, like the seasons. So the last three are laughter, thought, and then sleep. And so Adar is sleep, sleeping the end of the cycle, end of a day, resting at the end of the week. And so it's this kind of really fundamental process that happens throughout creation and existence of constructing and kind of digesting, like David spoke about in his essay on Adar and teaching, and then deconstruction. And it's this cycle that is always going on throughout creation and kind of the microscopic microcosm, macrocosm, and we get to experience when we are open to experiencing it. And so that's part of what I'll talk about today is allowing ourselves to take part in that cycle by, in a way, readying ourselves for sleep. And so, again, we're at the end of our day. We're lying in bed. We're ready to go to sleep and be eager to go to sleep. And if you've ever had trouble sleeping, you might know if you're eager or anxious to go to sleep, sleep often escapes you. And we can't force ourselves to sleep by thinking through it or pushing through it. We can't conquer sleep in a way. We have to allow sleep to conquer us. So sleep is, it's something that we surrender to. And to surrender, we have to loosen our grip on thought, loosen our grip on kind of our version of reality. And so if it feels apt for this season as the earth is starting to loosen, the winter is starting to kind of let loose its grip, and this thaw is occurring, we can perhaps experience that within us as well. And so going back to the letter of the month, Kuf, Kuf relates to this idea of disillusionment. Disillusionment being like letting go of the illusion, or perhaps the illusion being kind of ripped from us. It might be more kind of gentle, it might feel a little more violent. But I also relate it to death in a way. Death being the end of a cycle and creating room for rebirth and renewal and change. And so to leave space for that, we have to be able to loosen our grips on our kind of versions of reality. We all have our own version of reality. We're our own kind of worldviews, ways that we think that the world works. And I've found recently my worldview is kind of shifting a lot in reaction to different things that I see going on, in reaction to just hearing different voices that I hadn't heard before, learning different things, starting to see something from a different perspective. My kind of most, some of my most hardened, kind of harsh views of the world start to soften. And I've noticed as they start to soften, it leaves a lot of room for learning and growth. I can actually see things more clearly when I loosen a little bit my hardened views. Um, so this loosening is not necessarily changing your mind about something. It's not 180. Um, it might just be allowing in just a small amount of uncertainty to leave room for a deeper understanding. And for me, it also leaves room for a deeper gratitude for what I have in my life, for the strength of other people. Um, and so somebody outlined it to me in this way, which I thought was really interesting. What if you think of something that you believe with 100% certainty? You might think that there isn't anything, but you might be able to think of something you're really sure about. And if you take that 100% and just kind of scoot that back to 90%, that can leave a lot of room for learning, for this kind of softening. So what do we lose when we lose that 100%? Um, this relates to something we are always talking about, which is rigidity. And rigidity can be pretty nice if you think about it. Like it feels good a lot of times. Sometimes it doesn't. I think eventually it doesn't. Um, but in our daily lives, it can feel good because when we feel 100% about something, we kind of feel principled about it. We maybe feel a little self-righteous. Maybe we're unaware that it's kind of self-righteous, but um, we feel good about that view that we have. And we also feel comfortable. We feel comfortable that we kind of know how the world works and we feel safe because there's nothing kind of rocking us. And that feeling of safety gets to the fact that really when you strip down your rigidity, uh, often what it comes back to is a fear. Whether that's a fear of uncertainty, a fear of change, of things not being the way you always thought they were, something else. There's often fear that this kind of rigidity is coming from. And when we have that rigidity, we we just are more brittle. We are less resilient. And so Adar gives us this instruction um, that I think helps kind of break this down. Adar tells us to increase joy. And so how does increasing joy help? Um, for one, I think when we increase joy, I kind of come back to that trio of qualities of the months again. These last three qualities, which are laughter, and then thought, and then sleep. So we're kind of at laughter now, where we're taking ourselves a little less seriously. We maybe don't feel so self-righteous, don't feel kind of principled in our 100% views. We just have a little bit more lightness of being. We're a little less worried about how we're coming across to one another, about having the right answer. And I think through this, we start to create a bigger tent for ourselves. We can invite more people in when we invite in with joy, invite in with warmth. And we can start to share and to learn and kind of do a little less alienating of people and only accepting a certain worldview, only accepting a perfection in the way that um, the perfection of kind of perspective. And so I'm going to come back to this idea of joy as a point of connection. But as I was unfortunately stuck at home for Purim, I read the Purim story, and I had something Bob taught about in my mind. I think he said something about the how you can kind of read it as the king being the villain of the Purim story. And so I read it with that in mind. And it was in a way more gruesome to read, maybe because of just where we are right now. This idea of uh, young girls being gathered from across the country and brought to this harem to kind of see to the king felt really really gruesome again to read about. Um, and so it felt like this dark story. And Esther herself, even though she is made queen, she's not really safe there. She's only safe as long as she keeps the favor of this king. But she decides to be brave to try and save her people and approach the king and risk her life. And she enters this dangerous situation, but she enters it and doesn't just immediately lay out the situation, but what she does is she invites the king to and Haman to a banquet and then invites them to another banquet. And what she is doing is she's fostering this kind of joy and warmth and kind of light. She's kind of calling in the king um, with these banquets before, and she's humanizing herself. And when she humanizes herself, she humanizes her people, who she eventually brings up and kind of relays um, this reality of her people being in danger and asks for help. And so Esther, I think, is modeling gentleness and warmth and care as kind of a method of bravery and fighting for her people, rather than kind of a harsh breaking of barriers. And I think, it's this fear of uncertainty that we have within us that wants to keep these walls up that we have. And when we kind of go through this practice and let go of that fear and the certainty and just allow 10% to go. And then we open up our world to transformation. And we're able to take part in this cycle of deconstruction and then reconstruction and of death and then rebirth. We're letting go, we're surrendering to this sleep, and we're connecting ourselves to Ein Sof in this process, the source of thought, unified consciousness. And so the month is also related to the tribe of Naphtali, which I think also relates back to what I was saying about Esther. And Naphtali And one of the blessings he gets from his father, it says, Naphtali is a hind let loose who delivers beautiful sayings. This is from Genesis 49:21. A hind let loose who delivers beautiful sayings. So this month gives us this picture of being freed, free from whatever is holding us back, freed from that fear, freed from that rigidity. And what do we do with that freedom? We bring whatever good it is that we have to the world, and we become a blessing through this. And I just want to close this out by reading a poem that I wrote in 2021. So this is kind of coming out of COVID times. And I remembered it, and it's interesting reading back how many themes it's relating to in this month. I may have read it before, but here goes. Loss gives way to divine freedom, light pouring from the heavens and springing from the earth in a mess of puddles, winter loosening his whitened knuckles, earth softening her skin, releasing her perfume. And the mud smells like joy, wet cleats and young muscles, and I can feel once again the lightness of being.